I am 61 years old. My name is Gerald Whitmore. I am not a rich man. I am not a powerful man. I worked 34 years as a maintenance supervisor at a mid-size logistics company called Hartwell Freight. I fixed things, broken pipes, broken machines, broken systems. That was my whole life, fixing things. What I could never fix was what I saw behind that bar on a Friday night in October. But let me start from the beginning, because if I just tell you what I saw, you will not understand the weight of it. You will not feel what I felt, and I need you to feel it, because I carried it alone for a very long time. My wife's name is Donna. We were married 33 years. We met when I was 27 and she was 24. She was working as a receptionist at a dental office. I had come in for a cracked tooth. She smiled at me from behind the front desk, and I forgot all about my tooth. I forgot my own name. We got married 18 months later in a small church outside of town. 40 people. No fancy decorations, just flowers her mother picked from her own garden. I cried when she walked down that aisle. I am not ashamed to say that. We had one son together. His name is Marcus. He is 30 years old now. He married a woman named Priya, a sharp, ambitious woman who worked in corporate finance. I always tried to like Priya. I tried very hard, but there was something in the way she looked at me sometimes like I was furniture. Old furniture that nobody had bothered to throw out yet. Marcus was a good boy when he was young, respectful. He used to sit next to me in the garage while I worked on the old truck, handing me tools, asking me questions. "Dad, how does that work? Dad, why does that do that?" I loved those afternoons more than I can say. But when he married Priya and moved into their nice house in the nice neighborhood and started making his nice salary, something changed. He started looking at me the same way she did, like I was a relic, something to be tolerated at holidays, but not truly included in their real life. It hurt, but I stayed silent, because that is what fathers do. We absorb the pain so our children don't have to feel guilty for causing it. Now my best friend, his name is Raymond Cole. We had been friends for 38 years. We met at a job site when we were both in our 20s, young and broke and full of big ideas. Raymond was charming in a way I never was. Tall, well-dressed, always knew what to say, but he was loyal, or so I believed. He was the best man at my wedding. He was in the waiting room the night Marcus was born. He was at my father's funeral, holding my arm so I wouldn't fall. Raymond married a woman named Carol about 25 years ago. Carol was quiet and steady, the kind of woman who noticed everything but said very little. I always liked Carol. There was a gentleness about her that reminded me of still water, calm on the surface, but deep underneath. Raymond had worked his way up in the same company where I had spent my career. While I stayed in maintenance, Raymond moved into operations management. He became a director. He made more money. He drove a better car. But he always called me his brother. Always, at least, that is what I thought. Hartwell Freight threw its annual company celebration every October. It was one of those company parties that tries too hard, rented ballroom, open bar, buff it with food nobody really wanted to eat, a DJ playing music nobody truly wanted to dance to. But people came, people dressed up. It was a chance to pretend, for one night, that we were all more important than we felt on Monday morning. That year, the party was held at the Lake U Events Center, a big glass building on the edge of town with a view of the water. I had been to this event every year for 20 years. I knew almost everyone there. Donna looked beautiful that night. She was wearing a dark blue dress, her silver hair pinned up. She looked like the woman I married, just with time written gently on her face. I told her she looked beautiful as we walked in. She smiled but didn't say anything. She had been quiet for a few weeks before that. Distracted. I thought maybe she was tired. I told myself it was stress. I should have paid more attention. I know that now. Raymond and Carol arrived about 30 minutes after us. Raymond was in a dark suit, laughing loudly as he always did, working the room. Carol came to my side almost immediately and hugged me warmly. She seemed, I noticed this but didn't understand it yet, like she was bracing herself. Like someone who had already accepted a car crash was coming and was just waiting for the sound. Marcus and Priya were also at the party. Priya's firm did some contract work with Hartwell, so she had her own invitation. They arrived late, which was typical. Priya liked to make an entrance. She swept into the room in a red dress, Marcus trailing behind her looking polished and slightly apologetic, the way he always did at events. They came over to say hello. Priya kissed the air near my cheek. Marcus shook my hand, not a hug, a handshake. I don't know when my son stopped hugging me. I can't pinpoint the moment, but somewhere along the way, I became someone he shook hands with. Good turnout, Marcus said, looking around the room as if he were assessing real estate. Your father helped organize the safety displays in the back, Donna said. Priya glanced at me with a polite smile. How nice, she said. The way you say how nice about something that is not, in fact, particularly nice. They moved away into the crowd within 2 minutes. I watched my son walk away, and I took a long sip of my club soda. The night went on. I talked to people from my department, old colleagues, some who had retired, some still grinding away. I laughed. I told old stories. For a while, it was fine, normal. One of those ordinary evenings that you never expect will become the evening that redefines everything before and after it. It was around 9 o'clock when I went to get another drink. The bar was set up along the far wall, partially tucked behind a decorative partition, one of those folding wooden screen dividers that had flowers carved into it. I walked around the side of the partition because the front of the bar was crowded, and that is when I saw them. Donna, my wife of 33 years, Raymond, my best friend of 38 years, they were standing close, too close, in the narrow space between the back of the bar partition and the wall. It was a half-hidden corner. The bartender was at the other end, busy with the crowd. No one else was back there. He had his hand on her face. Her eyes were closed, and he was kissing her. Not a hello kiss, not a kiss on the cheek. A real kiss, slow and private and full of a history that I was clearly not supposed to know about. I stood there. I don't know for how long. It might have been 5 seconds. It might have been 30. Time stopped making sense. The noise of the party became a dull roar, like I had gone underwater. My chest tightened so severely that I thought, for one moment, I might be having a heart attack. I took one step backward, then another. I turned around, and Carol was right there, standing not 5 feet behind me. She had followed me. She had known exactly where they would be. And her expression, it was not surprise. It was not shock. It was something I can only describe as a tired, sorrowful knowing, like someone who had already grieved this and come out the other side. She looked at me with steady eyes, and she said, very quietly, "Stay calm, Gerald. Please, not here, not tonight. Just stay calm." I looked at her. Carol, my best friend's wife, and I understood in that moment that she already knew. How long? I whispered. She put her hand briefly on my arm. "Not here," she said again. "Find a chair, drink some water, and trust me, I am going to need you to hold it together for just a little while longer. There's something you don't know yet. Something I don't know yet." Those words, they lodged in my chest alongside everything else. What could I possibly not know that would matter right now? What information existed that could sit next to what I had just seen and make it even more complicated? I did what Carol said. I found a chair in a quiet corner near the emergency exit. I sat down. I put my glass of club soda on the table, and I stared at the condensation ring it made on the white tablecloth. I stared at it until the shaking in my hands slowed down. I am 61 years old. I have buried my parents. I have been laid off and rehired and laid off again. I have sat in hospital waiting rooms more times than I want to count. I have lived through things, but sitting in that chair, watching the party continue around me, as if the world had not just quietly ended, was one of the hardest things I have ever done. Donna appeared about 10 minutes later. She walked toward me with a glass of wine, her expression calm and social, already wearing that party smile she put on in public. She didn't know I had seen them. That became immediately clear. "There you are," she said lightly. "I've been looking for you." I looked at her. My wife, the woman I had loved for more than 3 decades, the woman I had held in the dark when she miscarried our second child at 4 months. The woman I had driven through a snowstorm to bring home from the hospital when she had pneumonia. The woman whose name I had kept on my lips like a prayer during the loneliest nights of my life. "I'm just resting," I said. My voice was steady. "I don't know how." She sat beside me for a few minutes, making small talk about people at the party. I nodded and said yes and and I watched her mouth move, and I thought, how long? The same question I had asked Carol. How long has this been happening? How many of our ordinary evenings were not ordinary at all? How many times did I sit across from Raymond at dinner, laughing at his jokes while he was carrying this secret? But I stayed silent. I fixed my face into something neutral, because Carol had asked me to, and there was a look in Carol's eyes that said she was holding something that mattered. Something I needed to hear before I did anything irreversible. Marcus and Priya found me later in the evening, around 10 o'clock. They were getting ready to leave. Priya was already on her phone. Marcus paused by my chair. "You look tired, Dad," he said. Not unkindly, but with that edge of mild impatience he had developed over the years, as if my tiredness was a minor inconvenience to his schedule. "I'm fine," I said. "You know, you really should think about retiring," Priya said, not looking up from her phone. "You've been at that company forever. It's time to just relax, as if 34 years of working was a habit I should shake off like an old coat. "I'll think about it," I said. Marcus squeezed my shoulder briefly, the closest thing to affection he'd offered all evening, and then they were gone. I watched them leave through the glass doors of the venue, back to their nice house in their nice neighborhood, and I felt so extraordinarily alone that I had to press my hands flat on the table, just to feel something solid. That night, on the drive home, Donna talked about the party, who was wearing what, who looked like they'd had too much to drink. Small talk, surface talk, the kind of conversation that fills space without filling anything at all. I drove, and I nodded, and I said nothing of what I was carrying. That night, I lay beside my wife in our bed, and I stared at the ceiling, and I thought, tomorrow I will talk to Carol. And this is where everything you think you know changes, so stay with me. I called Carol the next morning while Donna was out running errands. We met at a small diner about 20 minutes from the house. Corner booth. She was already there when I arrived, both hands wrapped around a coffee cup, looking like she hadn't slept. I probably looked the same. I sat down. Neither of us spoke for a moment. "Tell me everything," I said finally. Carol took a long breath. "I found out 8 months ago," she said. "I found messages on Raymond's phone. I confronted him. He didn't deny it. 8 months. She had been carrying this for 8 months. I was going to leave," she continued. "I had already spoken to a lawyer." But then she paused. She looked down at her coffee. "Then I found something else, Gerald, and I didn't know what to do with it." "What did you find?" She reached into her bag and placed an envelope on the table. She slid it across to me slowly, the way you hand someone a diagnosis. "Raymond found this," she said, "in your house about a year ago, You had asked him to help fix the water heater, remember, while you were at work. I remembered. Raymond had a key to our house for emergencies. He'd had it for years. I had given it to him myself. I opened the envelope. Inside were documents, legal documents, pages of them, with highlighted sections. I read the first page, then the second. My hands began to tremble again, but this time it was not from grief. It was from something else entirely. The documents were from a financial firm. They outlined a portfolio. Investments, savings, in my name, over $400,000 in my name, that I never knew existed. I looked up at Carol. What is this? It's yours, she said quietly. Your father opened that account when you were a child. He added to it his whole life. When he died, it transferred to you automatically through a trust. But the paperwork was sent to a post office box that was set up by the trust administrator, not your home address. You never knew. I stared at her. Raymond found the original notification letter when he was at your house that day, she said. He realized what it was, and instead of telling you, her voice tightened. He went to Donna. And then she told me the rest. Raymond had told Donna about the account before he told me. And Donna, my wife, my partner of 33 years, had gone with Raymond to a financial attorney to explore what could be done, how they could access the trust, how it could be managed, together. I asked. My voice sounded very far away. Carol nodded. The affair started shortly after that. I believe she stopped. She chose her next words very carefully. I believe Raymond used what he knew about the money to get close to Donna in a different way. And I believe Donna let it happen because she thought. Carol's eyes went sad and deep. She thought Raymond could help her get access to the money more easily if they were aligned. That word. My wife had become aligned with my best friend over the inheritance. My father had saved his entire life to leave me. I sat in that diner for a very long time. Carol sat with me. She didn't try to comfort me with words. She just stayed, and that quiet presence from the woman whose husband had betrayed me was the only warmth I felt that entire day. There's more, Carol said finally. Marcus knows. I went home that night, and I sat in my garage, my old garage, where Marcus used to hand me tools and ask me questions, and I let myself feel all of it. My son knew. How long had he known? What had Donna told him? Had he sat across from me at those holiday dinners, shaking my hand instead of hugging me, knowing what his mother was doing and choosing to say nothing? I thought about Priya's voice the night before. You really should think about retiring. I thought about how many times in the past year Marcus had casually asked about my finances. Dad, do you have a will set up? Dad, have you talked to anyone about your pension? Dad, what happens to the house if something happens to you and Mom? I had thought he was being responsible, thoughtful, planning ahead, the way Priya had probably trained him to think. But what if those questions meant something else? I did not sleep that night, or the night after. On the third day, I called the trust administrator myself. Carol had given me the contact information. I explained who I was. They verified my identity, and within 48 hours, the full picture came into focus. The account existed. It was real. My father, my quiet, hard-working, never complained about anything father who had driven a 20-year-old truck and worn the same winter coat for 15 years, had saved and invested carefully for decades. He had set up the trust for me before I was even born, added to it through his whole working life, and left me, his only son, $438,000. It was the single greatest act of love anyone had ever performed for me, and the people I trusted most had tried to take it from me. I want to tell you something about silence. When you are a man like me, a quiet man, a working man, a man who pats shoulders instead of making speeches, people mistake your silence for ignorance. They think that because you do not demand attention, you must not be paying attention. They think your patience is the same thing as powerlessness. They are wrong. I spent the next 3 weeks watching, listening, building a complete picture of everything that had been done behind my back, and by whom, and for how long. I spoke to the trust attorney. I spoke to a lawyer of my own. I documented everything Carol shared with me. And then I did something that nobody expected. I planned a dinner. I told Donna I wanted to have a family gathering. A reconciliation dinner, I called it. I said I felt like we had all been too distant lately, and I wanted everyone in one place. I kept my voice warm and ordinary. She agreed, seeming pleased, perhaps even relieved, as if she thought my agreeableness meant I suspected nothing. I invited Marcus and Priya. I invited Raymond and Carol. Carol knew what was coming. She had decided, finally, that she was done protecting Raymond from the consequences of who he had become. I cooked. I made a real dinner, pot roast, roasted vegetables, fresh bread, my mother's recipes, the kind of meal that fills a house with a smell that makes you feel safe. I set the table with the good dishes, the ones Donna and I had received as wedding gifts 33 years ago that we only used for special occasions. This was a special occasion. They arrived together, Marcus and Priya first, then Raymond and Carol. We all sat down. I poured the drinks. Donna carried the food out. The conversation started the way these things always start, pleasantly, stiffly, everyone performing their assigned roles in the theater of family dinner. Priya talked about a project at work. Marcus talked about a trip they were planning to Portugal. Raymond told a story about something funny that happened at the office. He laughed at his own joke. I watched his face and thought about 38 years and felt something cold and final settle in my chest. I waited until the plates were mostly empty, until everyone had refilled their glasses, until the performance was well underway, and everyone felt comfortable in their false version of normal. Then I set my fork down very gently, and I said, I want to talk about my father's money. The table went quiet. Not the quiet of people who don't know what you're talking about. The guilty quiet. The quiet of a room full of people who know exactly what you're talking about. Donna's face went still. Raymond looked at his plate. Marcus looked at Priya. I said, I know about the trust account. I know when you found out about it. I know who you told and when. And I know what was done with that information and what was planned. Gerald. Donna started. I'm not finished. I said, quietly, the way I always said everything quietly. I want to tell you all something about my father. His name was Henry Whitmore. Most of you never really knew him. You thought he was just a retired man who sat in his chair and drank decaf coffee and didn't say very much. I paused. He worked as a janitor for 31 years. He walked to work and back for the last 8 years of his career because the bus route changed and he didn't want to spend money on a car he didn't need. He never took a vacation. He wore the same suit to church every Sunday for 20 years. He gave up things, small things, large things, invisible things, his entire adult life, not for himself, but for me, to build something that would make my life easier when he was gone. My voice was steady. I had practiced it being steady, and the first people who found out about that gift, I said, were not me. They were a man who called himself my brother, and a woman who called herself my wife. Donna's eyes had filled with tears. Gerald, please, she said. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. I said, tell me what it is when you go with my best friend to a financial attorney to explore accessing a trust that belongs to me, without telling me it exists. Tell me the right word for that. Silence. Tell me what it is. I said to Marcus, when your mother tells you about money that belongs to your father, and your response is to start asking your father questions about his will and his pension, and what happens to the house. What is the word for that? Marcus had gone pale. Dad, I was just. I know what you were doing. I said. Not harshly, just factually, I know. I looked at Raymond last, 38 years. I said. He looked up, and for the first time in as long as I had known him, Raymond Cole looked small. 38 years I called you my brother. I said. I was the best man at your wedding. I sat in your hospital room when you had your gallbladder surgery. I loaned you money when you were going through that hard year in 2009 and never once asked for it back. I stood by you. I folded my napkin and placed it on the table, and you took advantage of every single bit of access I gave you. The only person at that table who was not implicated was Carol. She sat with her hands in her lap and her eyes cast down, and I thought she deserves better than all of this. She has always deserved better than this. I want to tell you what did not happen. I did not scream. I did not throw things. I did not fall apart. I pushed my chair back from the table, and I stood up and I said, I have been to see a lawyer. The trust has been fully transferred into an account in my name only. Carol was kind enough to provide documentation of communications between Raymond and Donna regarding the account, which my attorney now has copies of. There will be legal consequences of varying kinds for people at this table. Priya made a sound. Are you serious right now? Yes, I said. Gerald, we're family. She started. Family, I said softly, is not a password. It does not unlock permission to betray a person. It is something you earn every day by how you treat the people who love you. I walked to the front door. I put on my coat. I picked up the bag I had packed 2 days earlier and placed by the door when no one was looking. I turned around one last time. Donna was crying. Not the composed, social kind of crying. Real crying. The kind that meant she had just understood, fully, what she had done and what it would cost her. Marcus stood up. Dad, please, where are you going? To start the next chapter, I said, without anyone in this room having access to it, and I walked out. I moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. Clean place, quiet neighborhood. I could see a small park from the kitchen window where old men sometimes played chess on Saturday mornings. I liked that. I retained the attorney. The trust was secured. Raymond and Donna had not yet made any formal legal moves regarding the account, but the documentation Carol had provided made their intentions unmistakably clear. My attorney sent the appropriate communications. There were no legal claims pursued after that. The divorce was handled quietly. 33 years, handled quietly. The house was sold. Assets divided according to the law. Donna kept certain things. I kept my father's money, every cent of it, and the knowledge that he had loved me more faithfully than anyone else in my life ever had. Raymond and Carol separated within 2 months. Carol filed. I heard later that Raymond had tried to contest certain things in the divorce proceedings, and that it had not gone well for him. Carol, it turned out, had been documenting things for a very long time. She was steady water, still on the surface, but deep underneath. Marcus called me many times. The first calls I did not answer, not out of anger, out of a need to first figure out what kind of relationship was even possible now, what I was willing to offer and what I was not. Eventually, I answered. He came to my apartment on a Tuesday evening. He brought nothing, no gift, no wine, no prepared speech, just himself in a plain jacket, looking more like the boy who used to sit in the garage handing me tools than he had in years. He stood in my kitchen and he said, I'm sorry, Dad. Just that. 2 sentences. His voice broke on the second word. I poured us both coffee. I sat down across from him at my small kitchen table, the kind of table that barely fits 2 people, which meant we were close, which I think we both needed. Tell me what you knew, I said. He told me everything, not to excuse himself. He seemed to understand there was no excuse. He told me because I asked, and because honesty was the only currency he had left to offer me. He had known about the money for about 6 months before the party. His mother had told him. He hadn't known about the affair until the night of the party, when Priya, who had noticed the same thing I had seen behind the bar, had told him privately. He had done nothing, he had said nothing. He had shaken my hand instead of hugging me and flown to Portugal and asked careful questions about my will and done nothing. I was afraid of Priya, he said, and his voice was quiet and ashamed. I don't mean that to excuse it. She has this way of making everything seem logical. Like, this is just smart planning, Marcus. It's not hurting anyone, and I let myself believe it. Because it was easier. It was hurting me. I said, I know, he said. I know, Dad. We sat with that for a while. I keep thinking about the garage, he said eventually. When I was a kid, you'd be under the truck, and I'd be sitting on the bumper, and I'd ask you stuff, and you always had time. You always stopped what you were doing. You never told me you were too busy. You were never an interruption, I said. You were the whole point. He pressed his lips together hard, the way people do when they're trying not to cry. I don't know if I deserve another chance, he said. I thought about my father, Henry Whitmore, a man who gave up things his whole life quietly, without announcement, without asking for credit, because he believed in the person his son could become. A man who believed in me even when he was not there to see it. I thought about what he would do, sitting at this small kitchen table, with a son asking for another chance. You don't get a chance because you deserve one, I said. You get a chance because I choose to give one. There is a difference, and if you want it, you will have to earn it, slowly, with honesty, with showing up the right way, not because there's something to gain, but because it's right. Marcus nodded. His eyes were wet. Okay, he said. Okay, Dad. Priya, I understand, was not pleased with the direction Marcus was taking. She and I will likely never share a warm relationship. That is something I have made peace with. Marcus is finding his own footing, slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. I see the boy from the garage in him sometimes, and I hold on to that. Carol and I have stayed in touch. She is doing well. She is stronger than she was, or perhaps just more visible in her strength. We have coffee once a month at the same diner where she first showed me the envelope. We don't talk about the past very much anymore. We talk about books, about her daughter who is studying architecture, about the chess players in the park outside my apartment window. I think Carol and I are proof that sometimes the people you end up trusting most are not the ones you expected. They arrive sideways into your life, and they stay when everyone else leaves. And that is worth more than I can explain. I am still 61 years old, but I feel, somehow, both older and younger than I did a year ago. Older because I know more about human nature than I wanted to. Younger because I am, for the first time in a very long time, living a life that belongs entirely to me. I used my father's money carefully. I did not spend it recklessly. I did not perform wealth. I am not that kind of man. I invested a portion of it sensibly. I paid off some debts I had carried too long. And I used a small part of it to do something I had wanted to do for 30 years. I took a course in restorative woodworking, cabinet making, furniture restoration, the kind of careful, patient work that reminds you that broken things can be made beautiful again. It turns out I am good at it, better than good. I have already taken on a few small commissions from neighbors. An antique chest of drawers, a dining table with a warped leaf, a rocking chair that needed new spindles. I fix things. That is still what I do. But now I fix them for myself, on my own terms, in a workshop that smells like wood shavings and linseed oil, and nobody is watching the clock. My father would have liked that, I think. If you are still here, and I hope you are, I want to leave you with something. I spent a long time after everything happened asking myself the same question that I think many people ask when they are betrayed by the people they love most. Was I foolish? Did I love too easily? Trust too completely? Keep my silence too long? Should I have been harder, sharper, more guarded? And I have come to a conclusion. No, I was not foolish for loving my wife fully. I was not foolish for trusting my best friend with a key to my house. I was not foolish for giving my son room to grow without demanding that growth look exactly the way I wanted. I was not foolish for being quiet when I was disrespected, for absorbing pain without broadcasting it, for choosing dignity over drama. Those were not weaknesses. Those were the marks of the man my father raised. The foolishness, if we want to call it that, belonged to the people who mistook my gentleness for ignorance, who looked at a quiet man and saw an easy target, who thought that because I did not fight loudly, I could not fight at all. Here is what I know about people who betray the ones who love them most. They do not win. They may appear to, for a while. They may get what they want for a season. But they pay for it in ways that cannot be undone, in the loss of their own integrity, in the faces of people who no longer look at them with trust, in the hollow feeling of knowing that what they have was gotten through deceit rather than earned through love. And here is what I know about the ones who are betrayed. You are not diminished by what was done to you. You are not less for having been deceived. The fact that you are capable of loving fully, trusting genuinely, giving freely, that is not a flaw. That is the entire point of being human. The only question is what you do with what you discover. You can become bitter. You can close off every door and shutter every window and decide that the world does not deserve your warmth. Or you can do what my father did, quietly, for his entire life. You can keep going. You can keep building. You can take what you have, even if it is less than you expected, even if it is not what you planned, and you can make something steady and true from it. My father worked as a janitor for 31 years and left me $400,000, not because he was lucky, not because the world was kind to him, but because he made a choice every single day to put something aside for the person he loved most, even when that person had no idea it was happening, even when no one was watching, even when there was no audience and no applause. That is love, not the love that performs itself at parties and posts itself on social media. The love that shows up in the small accounting of an ordinary Tuesday, in the walking to work so your son can have something better, in the sitting in a hospital waiting room, in the handing of tools in a garage. I have my father's gift, and I have my woodworking bench, and I have Carol across a diner table once a month, talking about books, and I have Marcus, still imperfect, still learning, showing up slowly in the right ways. It is not the life I planned, but it is mine, fully, truly mine, and no one will take it from me again.